Ken Kesey and I met at Stanford in the graduate writing class in the fall of 1958. We hit it off right from the beginning, and I spent a lot of time at Perry Lane where he lived with his wife and 2 dogs. I went there every noon with bread and lunch meat, the sandwich king of the Midwest, for I was from Ohio. He was from Oregon, and when we appeared together, some people would greet us with, "Here come the old boys." Until they got to know us, then the greeting was, "Uh-oh, here they come again." Kesey threw a big party at his house. He roasted a whole pig. I was in the gym playing basketball with some friends and invited these frat rats to the party. When I arrived, Kesey was curving big hunks of meat off the pig. As fast as he filled the plates, hands grabbed the slices and added them to the piles on their plates. At dusk, we moved inside, leaving what was left of the pig on what was left of the fire. The fraternity guys had showed up, and they prowled the house, eyeballing everything. They stood in a bunch in the living room, and Kesey heard one of them say, "I hate the guy who asked us to this party. Let's trash the place." Kesey jumped into his face. "What the hell are you talking about? This is my house. See that picture on the wall? That's my wife." Then in a swift wrestler takedown move, grabbed the guy by his shirt front, fell over backwards, pulled the guy with him, and slammed the guy's face hard against the floor. Blood shot out of his nose. There was a crash of glass against the brick wall. Mitch Strashinsky, one of our writing classmates, stepped forward holding a jagged beer bottle. I grabbed a broom and stuck it in front of me like a lance. We were an imposing trio. Kesey in his lumberjack outfit with jeans and boots and logger shirt. Mitch wore his dark slacks, Florsheim shoes, and tweed sports coat. I was in a mesh see-through tank top, green Bermuda shorts, penny loafers without socks. The 3 Musketeers, Artist, Arnold, and Pathetic. Before an all-out brawl began, the guy on the floor staggered to his feet and went out the door, leaving a bloody trail. The others followed. Kesey looked at me. "Just what did you think you were going to do with that?" I looked at the broom. "Well, I was planning to discombobulate them long enough you could throw one down and hold him on the floor while Mitch carved a KK on his chest with that broken beer bottle." Mitch laughed. Kesey shook his head. A startled look came over his face. He rushed to the open door. "What the hell?" A big mongrel dog ran past, dragging the pig down Perry Lane. Disappeared into the night. Kesey turned back. "Party over, boys. Time to go home." The Saturday afternoon Perry Lane croquet tournament was in full swing. The course started in the front yard, crossed the driveway, went down the side of the house and across the deck and back. The washing machine and dryer were on the deck, and the washer was running a load. The washer was out of balance, and the machine jumped and hopped around the deck. The croquet players had to judge when to whack the ball to get it through the machine's gyration as it lurched from side to side. Then they played through the backyard and into the yard next door and circled around to Kesey's front yard. Miles Davis's record, "Out of the Blue," blared over the speakers. The thwack of the croquet balls, a rhythmic counterpoint. A car came roaring up the lane and turned into Kesey's drive. It skidded to a stop just as a croquet ball zoomed past the grill. The driver hopped out. "Made it in the neck. I could hear the bark of the back and the back bearings going, but luckily I had my bearings from the directions they gave me down at the bookstore." He loosened a pack of Camels from the sleeve of his T-shirt and shook out a cigarette, his head moving from side to side. Craggy face acknowledged the croquet players with a raise of eyebrows and a quick grin. Then he lit the Camel, took a drag. Kesey's dachshunds yipped around his ankles. Neil Cassidy had arrived on the lane. Recently out of prison, he had swung by to meet Kesey, and after they shook hands, Cassidy said, "I was at a party over in Oakland and needed a ride to the railroad to get to my brakeman's job, and announced I'd give 2 joints to anyone who could help me out. And these 2 very dapper gents obliged only to find out they weren't gents at all. For when I got out of the car and thanked them, they asked for the joints. I most happily complied, and they announced, "You're under arrest." 2 years for 2 joints in San Quentin. But no sniveling, as you well know, even though it cost me my job on the railroad and a divorce while I was incapacitated or incarcerated, or however you spell it. What it amounts to, Ken, is I need to borrow some tools, inasmuch as the rear end of my Jeepster has succumbed to what appears to the lack of the greasiations. As soon as Kesey produced the tools, Cassidy disappeared under the back end of the Jeepster. Everyone knew who he was, Jack Kerouac's best friend, fictional partner in Jack's book On the Road. They didn't get a chance to meet him, though, for he was under the car, talking all the time. We're fourth-dimensional beings, inhabiting a three-dimensional body, living in a two-dimensional world, black and white, good and evil, with a touch of gray. Our fingers, you know, are the claws for me, 3 inches the bigger thumb. Lost the tip of the other one. I took a swing at Luann and hit the wall. Instead, osteomyelitis set in and they had to amputate the tip. But the bandage hid my thumb and gave me a chance to reveal my Greek torso. "Are you all right in there, Mr. Cassidy?" someone asked. I'm having these insights. I'm serious about America. Speed or endurance? 6 days it was. Finally, she grabbed the Vicks Vapor Rub instead of the Vaseline, and that's what ended it. The only three-way I ever had. Kerouac was always looking for a willing cohort. He did nothing, and I did nothing, and there wasn't nothing he would do for me, and nothing I wouldn't do for him. So he sat around all the time doing nothing. Don't eat while you're angry. Who was ever hungry, angry? I played short, outfield, no glove, learned an illegal pitch and caught Satchel Paige barehanded after the 303 guard done me in because the coach thought I was chicken shit. President Cleveland had some certain proclivities, and canines may have been one. Remarkable your dog has kept it secret all these years. I'm gone now, not to reappear until lamentations from the Holy See are no longer sought, all for naught. And more of the same, all day long. Pretzels, the dachshund, poking her nose in to check on his progress. Cassidy, not to emerge till dark. He wiped his hands with a rag, put it on the ground, laid Kesey's tools neatly on top, then drove off, not to be seen again until that fateful day in June 1964, when, with Cassidy at the wheel, we drove to Manhattan and back in the big bus further. We were movie makers then, making a movie that had never been done before, a combination of real-life documentary and made-up dramas, fortified with a jar of LSD-laced orange juice. Let's have some.
Grape juice.
We can pass it around. Years later, Kesey and I were walking through downtown Eugene and came upon a kid selling homemade brownies. A sign said 25 cents. We stopped and looked at his wares. He stared up with big eyes. "What's in those brownies?" I said. He looked puzzled. "Chocolates." I raised my eyebrows up and down. "Are you sure there's no P-O-T in them?" "What's that?" Kesey spoke up before I could reply. Power of transformation. Power of transformation. What's in those cookies? Power of transformation. P-O-T. The kid nodded. We bought some brownies and moved on. "Fast thinking," I said. "I had to do something to save your ass, you numbskull." The dad yelled from behind us, "Whatever happened to that movie, Kesey?" Kesey turned around and said, "We were arrested." That's the chapbook. We were busted at La Honda, Kesey's house in the Redwoods, on the ridge between Palo Alto and the ocean. Kesey and I were in a room editing the bus movie when the cops burst in with a warrant. They thought Kesey was running a marijuana operation and Neil Cassidy was delivering the goods, constantly driving in and out. They found enough pot to arrest 14 of us who were in the house that night. Through a plea deal, we were all cut loose, except for Kesey because it was his house, and Paige Browning, whom they had been after for a long time, knowing he was driving weed from Mexico to San Francisco, but they were never able to catch him with the goods. So arrested had a double meaning. First, jail time for Kesey and Paige, and next, a stop to our movie making. Filmmakers who heard about the movie said they could put it together. They loaded up the boxes of film and tape and drove away. A few months later, when Kesey went out to get the morning paper, the boxes would be sitting on the porch. Many have tried to climb that mountain, Kesey said, but all have failed. What it meant was everybody had to consider a new way for things to be. The real challenge for superheroes was what to do between telephone booths. Kesey decided to make the movie himself. He bought a professional Steenbeck 16mm editing table, set it up in his cabin on the coast, and hired John Teton, a filmmaker, to do the editing. While that was going on, Kesey brought the pranksters to his farm and recorded them, asking them about Neil Cassidy. For in this movie, Cassidy would be caught in no man's land, in the spiritual world, neither in heaven, nor purgatory, nor hell. The judges on high couldn't decide what to do with him, where he belonged, so they decided to put the spirit of Cassidy on trial. The original pranksters would testify. Kesey planned to film it himself. He had a new structure built at his farm, filled with church pews, an aisle down the middle, and a raised judge platform at the end. The whole plan got scuttled. John Teton quit, and with no one to do the editing, Kesey decided to sell the movie at a table and go another direction. He went through the sound tapes and, using them for dialogue, wrote the screenplay, The Further Inquiry, which Sterling Lord, his agent, sold to Viking as a book. The book was scheduled to come out at the American Booksellers Convention in Las Vegas. Viking would throw a big launch party for the book at Caesar's Palace, and Kesey would be the featured speaker. Something for the ideal attraction that would make his appearance memorable, Kesey came upon a 1948 International Harvester school bus for sale. The original Further had been retired and parked under shady trees in a back lot where it would rust in peace. But Further would ride again, and if anyone asked Kesey which was the real bus, he would tell them, there is only one Starship Enterprise, no matter how many versions. Kesey shoved the church pews to the side, parked a new bus in the building, and everybody went to work, cleaning the interior, tuning the engine, the brakes, the driveline, and transmission. Linda Lanker, the renowned Eugene artist, painted a rendition of Michelangelo's fresco in the Sistine Chapel, David reaching out with his finger to touch the outstretched finger of God. The rest of the bus was painted in day-glow colors with a white swirl running from the fender in the front to the platform on back. Kesey filled eggshells with colored paints and had kids throw them at the bus, creating abstract lines. The Grateful Dead's Rex Foundation donated $5,000 to buy a completely new sound system with microphones, a sound mixer, CD player, and a 5-mile radius FM transmitter, so people driving in cars behind us and alongside us could listen to what was going on in the bus. With Kesey's nephew, Kit, at the wheel, we headed for the book convention. On the freeway, cars passed on the left, then slowed down to read the sign in the window. Turn in to 104.7 K-Buzz and drop back, picking up on our music and microphone rants. They'll stone you when you're trying to go home. Duck in the alley, get hit with the finale. And they'll stone you when you're there all alone. Hide your head, hide under some bed. But I would not feel so all alone, not in a parade on the promenade. Everybody must get stoned. We pulled into a rest stop, a line of cars behind us. The drivers and passengers piled out and surrounded the bus. When we left, they zipped past, horns honking, arms waving, while another line of cars followed. In the late afternoon, we pulled into a motel across the highway from an Army base in Nevada. Parked the bus under the shade and went into the restaurant and ate. Outside in the cool evening, Kesey broke out his paints and while sitting on a stool, began working on the bus, adding faces and tails and animal bodies to the eggshell splatters. 3 young boys rode into the parking lot on stingray bikes. They carried skateboards under their arms. Circling around the bus, they rode past Kesey and one yelled, "Are you piecers or geezers?" They rode past Kesey and all yelled it out. "Piecers or geezers?" They continued, circling and yelling. He finally lifted the paintbrush and turned around. "Neither. We're the merry band of pranksters." The ice broke and they stopped to talk. Kesey explained what the bus was all about, then asked if they'd like to paint their skateboards. They were all for it. Kesey broke out paintbrushes and paint and turned the boys loose. They worked till dark, then rode off, holding the skateboards by their edges. A car pulled in and parked behind the bus. Timothy Leary, John Barlow, and Bill Walton got out. We exchanged shakes and hugs. This was a planned meeting, the reason we had stopped in this out-of-the-way motel. Leary also had a book coming out in the convention in Las Vegas. And he and Walton were going to ride there with us on the bus. Barlow would drive their car back to California. After dinner, we climbed on top of the bus. Above us, the Nevada sky alight with stars and a waxing crescent moon. Kesey waxed along with the moon. He talked about becoming enlightened, that it used to be done by going up in the hills or the desert, but now it's got to be done by community. Leary nodded. He agreed up to a point, but added, "You also have to talk about psychic energy and cosmic energy, words hundreds of years old, the holy of holies." "Like that," I said, "a holy in the sky." A shooting star burned across the sky and disappeared into a hole. Bill Walton, star basketball player, had gone through numerous foot and back surgeries. He said his bicycle became his gym, church, and wheelchair, all in one. A constant circling motion rolling over the curvature of the earth and overcoming his debilitating pain. He could think and he could dream. "I ride the internet," said John Barlow, former Wyoming rancher and Grateful Dead lyricist, a pioneer in the formation of the internet and a leader in the fight to keep the internet open. He said the internet is going to do to monotheism what Tenderizer does to meat. But you have to remember, he added, what comes at you out of that screen is not experience. It is information. It's got as much relation to experience as beef jerky does to cows. Leary didn't see that any of us were saying anything that had any relevance to the future. We have a general agreement, he said, that things are not going well. Hundreds of negative solutions and restrictive possibilities. But he couldn't pick up on his radar screen any practical projection of the future. At which point, 2 o'clock in the a.m., I decided to leave them at their intellectual ramblings and go to bed. The next morning, we loaded our bags and hit the road for Vegas. In the late afternoon, we parked in front of Caesar's Palace, relaxed in the grass, and saw a small parade stomping along the sidewalk. Don King, the flamboyant boxing promoter, strode in front, shouting, "The man-beast, the giant killer, he believes in the unbelievable, snatches the possible out of the impossible. If you want to sell a steak, you can't just have the sizzle, you got to have the sauce. Behind me is the man with the juice, the giant killer." Mike Tyson, muscled and glowering, shadow box 10 steps behind Don King. People lining the sidewalk shouted and waved, Mike Tyson, you kill him, Tiger. Kesey's son Zane had given me a yellow cab driver's hat that looked like a military headgear, except it was bright yellow with a black brim and yellow cab in big letters across the front. I ran across the lawn and fell in step with Don King. He looked at me. What the fuck? Remember me, Don? I drove you in Cleveland. You liked it so much you kept me on for a couple of weeks. Oh, yeah, good to see you. Call me when I'm back in the Buckeye State. For sure. I gave him the two-finger salute to the brim of my cap and returned to the lawn. Bill Walton, leaning on crutches, recovering from an operation, greeted me with a big grin. Leary patted my shoulder and laughed. Kesey shook his head, not a bit surprised. Don King's voice failed away as he strode into the main hall. Viking paid for a big room on the ground floor of the casino. A stage and lectern stood at one end. Rows of chairs filled the middle. Behind that, tables laden with food and drinks. The place was full, and Kesey drew a resounding applause when he took the stage. He welcomed everybody, then did a short bit about how the book, The Further Inquiry, came along. Prepare the court for the next inquiry, he read from the book. The courtroom is vast and dim, starkly furnished, rows of old wooden church pews, threadbare carpet in the aisle, old four-bladed ceiling fan rotating lugubriously. The prosecutor picks up a dossier of the next case. Cassidy, Neal, alias Moriarty, Dean, alias Pomeroy, Cody, alias Kennedy, Hurt, alias Houlihan, Dean, alias Speed Limit. Kesey turned to the end of the book when the spirit of Cassidy climbs from the defendant's dock and moves toward the bus door. He gets in and starts the engine. Let me smooth the old bitch out for you, Cassidy says. Little too rich after a long nap. Cassidy's booted foot tromps down on the gas. Kesey raised his hand and slapped the lectern. A steel door in the back opened and further roared into the room. Kit at the wheel. Kit went for the brakes. His foot slipped and hit the gas. The bus careened into the food tables. Plates, glasses, chicken legs, salads, sandwich meats, jello, desserts, bottles of wine and beer exploded across the floor. The bus slid to a stop. Front end splattered in guck. Windshield dripping with goo. Women shrieked. Men knocked over chairs, and everyone fled the room. Sitting in the chair close to the stage, Peter Meyer, the CEO of Viking, surveyed the mayhem. He turned to David Stanford, Kesey's editor, and said, "Now that's what I call publishing." We packed up and went back to Oregon. We can thank Steve Jobs for putting Apple computers in the classrooms. Both Kesey's and my kids learned computers in high school, and they bullied us into joining the digital world of storytelling. We started our foray into mid-digital mayhem with a basic desktop PC. Pat Mackey, a friend who worked at Symantec, helped us go online, dial-up, where we snuck into chat stations and were quickly recognized as total doofs. "Why are you shouting, Burly Ken?" some girl asked. I had inadvertently hit the caps lock key. We gave up playing in the teenagers' room. We decided to work on the bus movie. Our pal Bob Laird found Kesey a Macintosh video editing suite. At the same time, we opened an office, 2 rooms in a one-time motel, with the post office in another room, the bank in front, and the shopping center across the street. A perfect setting for our burgeoning internet business. Dip-painted VHS covers hung on a clothesline outside the office. We filled a tub with water, dribbled different colored enamel paints on top, dipped white cassette covers in and out, and they were painted, each one different. We finished the first two parts of the bus movie. The intrepid traveler and his merry band of pranksters look for a cool place. We made master VHS tapes and copied them on decks stacked in a rack against the back wall. Labels printed from the computer were pasted on. The VH tapes were slipped into their dip-painted sleeves. Labels were pasted on the sleeves. Kesey and I signed the boxes, and they were mailed off to everyone who had responded to the announcement on our Intrepid Trips website. Get your bus movie tape by emailing us your address, then send us $20 when the movie arrives. What about your honor system on the paying, we were asked. Any deadbeats? No idea, Kesey said. We don't keep track. Jeff Barnard, an Associated Press writer from Southern Oregon, came to our office to do an interview with Kesey. After talking for a while, Jeff abandoned his notes and questions to find out exactly what we were doing in this room full of computer gear. When he was finished with the interview, he put his notebook away, shook hands, and left. A few days later, his piece appeared in the newspapers, a short intro about Kesey and his life on the farm in Pleasant Hill. Then the remainder of the article about our office, the video editing, the packaging, and the internet marketing. The story went out on the AP wire all over the world. Orders poured in. We made about $15,000 in like a week and a half. Well, 3 years after its inception, the bus movie was finally out there. Not exactly the way you envisioned, but a success, nevertheless. One morning when Kesey walked into the office, I could tell his duck feathers were ruffled. He plopped in his chair and didn't start telling us about the shows he had seen on TV the night before, like he usually did. I've blown my stoic calm, he said. Some jerk robbed our house yesterday, and in broad daylight, too. When we got home from town, we saw him running out and taking off in an old car. I was going to accept it. Forgiveness, nine-tenths of saintliness, and all that. He knew the old thing about getting fixated on something. You first become obsessed, and the next thing you know, you are possessed. Vengeance is mine, saith the Lord. Okay, Kesey would let the Lord handle it. Then he discovered his dad's cufflinks were gone. That tore it, particularly when some guy showed up later in the evening saying he'd been over to a friend's house and the friend was bragging about the burglary he'd pulled. And it pissed this guy off so much, he decided he'd tell Kesey. He told him that the old guy, the thief, lived in a trailer off CV Loop on a dirt road. We headed out in my station wagon. My son Simon sat in the back with a wooden broom handle propped up between his legs. Someone might take it for a rifle. I grabbed the walk-around phone. It could be a walkie-talkie. The trailer was a real speed freak dump. Old cars and rusted auto parts scattered in a seedy lot. A sag, mildewed single wide. Kesey got out and I followed with the phone. The path was littered with canning jars filled with rocks. He banged on the screen door. No answer. He pulled it open. Wait a minute, I said. You're not going to go in there, are you? Speed and guns go together like milk and cookies. Not an apt comparison, he said, and tried the door. It was unlocked. He went in. I put the phone to my ear and acted like I was reporting our situation. I could hear him inside banging around. Across the street, there was movement in the curtains of an old farmhouse. I was getting antsy and about to yell at him when he came out. I found them. He opened his hand, showing the cufflinks, engraved with his dad's initials, F-E-K. A fierce old lady came striding across the street. What do you people want? There's no one home there. You shouldn't be snooping around. We're Mormons, ma'am, Kesey said, pushing past her. You want to buy a subscription to the Watchtower? He didn't wait for an answer. We beat it out of there. He was thoughtful on the way back to the office. A real sad scene, he said. All the windowsills were covered with Beanie Babies. There must have been hundreds of them. He was quiet a minute. I just realized that Beanie Baby someone left at our house, it's not there anymore. That thief took it. We're not going back to look for it, I said. Kesey grinned and grunted. Dogs use pee-mail. They pee their messages onto the tire, and it goes all over town, all over the state, sometimes all over the country, getting read everywhere with more messages being added. One morning, when I arrived at the office, I was surprised to see Kesey outside, carrying a pail and a rag. He had a sheepish grin on his face. We went inside the office where his dog Happy was hiding under the table. Kesey put the bucket and the rag in the bathroom. He came out and sat down. That man was so mad he was shaking, Kesey said. I had let Happy out and went looking for him later and saw him down the line peeing on the tire of a new SUV. A man came out of his office and started yelling at Happy, so I went down to cool the guy out. He was furious. Dogs are supposed to be on a leash, he yelled. Look at my wheel, all covered with dog piss. Kesey said he took Happy back to the office, fetched the water and rag, and washed the guy's wheel. The guy standing there, raging at him all the time. Brand new car, just washed, just polished, and look at it now, while Kesey swabbed with the rag. To hell with this, Kesey said when he finished telling me the story. Let's go to town and have a drink. We parked in Springfield and walked to the bar. A brown object was on the sidewalk. I picked it up. A wooden pot pipe, and loaded, too. I whipped out some matches, lit one, held it to the pipe when Kesey pointed to the sky and said, look at that. I looked up, and with his other hand, he snatched the pipe and then disappeared it up his sleeve. I looked over at him, and saw a cop car driving alongside. The driver looked over us and sped up. Kesey laughed, began dancing a little two-steps, and sang. When you walk the streets, you will have no cares if you walk the lines and not the squares. When you go through life, make this your goal. Watch the donut, not the hole. Hole in the ground, hole in your head. Fell in the hole, thought I was dead, crawled out of the hole, and this is what I said. Watch the donut, not the hole. He slowed to a walk. This is where the revolution is at, he said. Where the people in the know that mercy comes before justice. And the carrot is better than the stick. And that love is the only true compass that can guide you down the main streets of money-mad America. Ah, here we are. Let's have that drink. Thank you. Thank you so much. That's terrific. I put that together just for tonight from pieces of the book I'm working on, CRONIES. So now, if you want me to sign anything, we'll do that. We'll break. And pardon me. Oh, I forgot that. Let's have question and answers. That's good. Okay, lay 'em on me. That's good. Okay, let's. Yes.
Did you have as much fun writing it as you seemed to?
I can't hear you.
Was this a really fun book to write? Did you enjoy writing this?
Oh, very much. Yes, very much. Yeah, because for one thing, my wife Eileen is a retired high school English teacher, And she taught both Cuckoo's Nest and Notion in her classes. And in AP English, she'd bring me in every year for 19 years to talk to her classes. And when I did that, I just did it off the cuff. I'd make notes of, the sequence, and I'd just do it like that. So I had a lot of this in mind when I started writing this book. Yeah, and it's a big book. It's 586 pages, 70 chapters. So we'll see what happens with that.
He'd sit there and laugh while he was writing, and laugh and laugh and laugh while he's typing away. Hopefully he was more amused.
Just like this. I was burned by the spotlight when I was in high school. That's why I love to perform. It was playing on the football team on Friday nights under the lights, out there with the band playing, the cheerleaders lifting their legs real high, and the fans screaming and intercepting a pass and running it for a touchdown and getting caught on the 5-yard line and being dropped on the 1-yard line and pulled out because I was a defensive back. Going up to the coach and yelling, "Coach, let me run it in! Let me run it in! I want a touchdown!" Sit down. So anyway, that's the real. So it's been many years of with Kesey performing, doing lots of different shows and different things. So I really enjoy this, going out and meeting everybody and telling the stories. That's it. One question. Hey, that's a record. Okay. I'll go.
Are you related to the guy in the photo behind you? In the case.
In the cage.
In the case.
Which guy? That guy? I think that's Ken Sanders' great uncle.
You just need the beard.
Yeah, just the beard. That's good. No, this is actually my first trip to Salt Lake City. My son Ken has lived here for 30 years. And so it's great to come back and hear this. And so I really wanted to meet Ken because he's so well known and famous. My two best.
Kid, I'm your son, right here.
I know Ken Sanders. I'm talking about. My two real good friends, Ed McClanahan and Wendell Berry, are great friends of Ken and have been here at the store. So this is really an honor for me to come here too. Yes.
Great to have you.
Well, thank you.
Are you going to be traveling through Utah?
No, we're flying home tomorrow.
He's traveling to the Salt Lake City airport.
Yeah, right. Yeah, no, we have quite a busy time at home. We live on a little 6-acre place on a creek in Lost Creek Valley in the foothills of the Cascades, 20 miles east of Eugene. An idyllic setting with a cow and a calf, and now our daughter, who lives behind us in her place, has bought a little puppy, and so and she's a teacher now too. So during the day when she goes to work, Eileen and I get the puppy sit.
Such labor.
Yes.
You were on the bus that further bus. You were on that bus?
Yes, the further bus.
What was the weirdest place, one place in America that stood out in a distance there? One place that just
Well, New Orleans,
weird.
yeah, there were a lot of weird places, but New Orleans was really special. We met a guy named, I don't know what his name was at the time, but he was in a bar, Absinthe Bar, playing the piano and singing. We went in there, and the Merry Band and the Pranksters are actually a band. We all play instruments or anything. We do a form of music called nonverbal communication, making it up as we go along. And so we went in there and broke out our instruments and played with him and sang with him. And meanwhile, we filmed that whole trip. We're filming the whole thing. And I remember one time he banged on the piano. He says, "I can't stand it, that big old camera staring at me like that." But anyway, we asked him, "Was there any place around here to go swim?" And he says, "Yeah, Lake Pontchartrain." And we said, "Well, you want to take us there in the bus?" And he says, "Yeah." So he goes, and as he gets up to go, this little dog runs out and jumps right along with him and onto the bus, and it was his dog. And he was a welder working in this small town near New Orleans, and he had a big fight with his dad and took off, and he'd been on a 3-day drunk in New Orleans. And so we drove to Lake Pontchartrain and swam in there with the well, we parked in the parking lot and we went in the water and went swimming and everything. And we started to notice that this was not right. Something's going on here. And so we decided to get out of there. And as we left, we realized we had parked and gone into the colored only parking lot and colored only swimming thing. And we wondered why those guys were looking at us so funny. And so we went out and we called the guy Moonlight Sinatra because the song he was playing when we first met him was Moonlight Sonata. And so his little dog was there on his lap. We were driving away. He says, "Let me out." And we said, "What?" And he says, "Let me out right here." And we were out on the highway, and it was getting dark. And so we got out and left him and saw him sitting there like that. And we were going along, and Hassler, one of the guys on the bus, said, "What in the hell happened back there?" And I can't remember who said it. It said, "I don't know. I think we just did a form of reverse integration." But as we went through the South, we were stopped by cops every once in a while wanting to know if we were freedom riders. And we had no idea what freedom riders were. When we were on that bus traveling across the country and back, we had no idea what was going on in the rest of the world. No newspapers, radio, TV, nothing. We were just a self-enclosed, almost like a spaceship going through there, high all the time, making our movie, making music and everything. Yeah, the movie was quite a thing. Like I said, we got 2 of them done, and then Kesey died, so we couldn't do any more. Everything fell apart. And then some other guy came and made one called Magic Trip, which was a real rip-off of our movie. But we did, for a while there, get it out. And now you can still get that movie from Zane Kesey, Ken Kesey's son, at kesey.com, DVD versions. And so it's interesting. It's a piece of history, and it was recorded.
So that movie, the trip that came out that was in all the theaters, that wasn't what the movie you're talking about?
That guy talked Zane or made a deal with Zane to make a movie, and it was supposed to be a movie about Kesey, but he saw all of our bus film, which still exists, in the cans, the actual 16 mm film. He took it all, and then he cut it into his own bus movie. And when I saw it, it really pissed me off because we had made that movie, and he made his version of it, and I did not like his version of it because he was trying to concentrate on sex and drugs. But that had nothing to do, the drugs were, we'd been doing LSD and pot, since 1960. And this was 64. So, who cared about that? But he's trying to inject all this other stuff into it.
So you can get the Ken Kesey thing on his website there, on the website? You can get the original?
The movie, yeah, it's on Zane Kesey's website.
Zane Kesey's website?
Zane, Z-A-N-E.
I always thought saw the thing there with that movie that was out.
Oh, yeah. I look at it every once in a while. It's really funky, but it's real. Yeah.
The worst part about the knockoff movie is Minnie Mouse on helium. All the voiceovers are just awful.
Well, yeah, that was the other thing about it. He went and got all our tapes that we had made on the bus trip, and he used those for dialogue on his movie, but he had actors and actresses saying it. He wouldn't even use the real people.
Yeah.
And that was the other thing that pissed everybody off. We didn't get a dime out of any of it.
Yeah, it's pretty bad.
But that's water. Who cares, Over the bridge, under the dam.